All right, so today we're going to start talking about box and whisker plots. You might have seen some of these on STAR tests and questions like that, and I want to get you more familiar with them. First thing I want to show you is what each of these little pieces mean. So we're going to go down to this diagram, and the first box where that dot is your minimum. We can use the word min to abbreviate this. At the very top, that dot is going to be the max or the maximum. So those are your lowest and your highest values. In the middle of the box, that line, we have our median. This is also known as Q2. We're going to be talking about Qs as in quartiles. So the quartile 2. Then these edges of the box, the first one is quartile 1 or Q1. And the last side of the box is Q3. So this is a box and whisker plot. Our min and our max are our whiskers. Our quartiles, so Q1 and Q3, make our entire box, and Q2 is in the middle of that box, or somewhere, usually in the middle of the box. Let's go ahead and look at the vocabulary section. So for vocabulary, a box and whisker plot shows the variability of data along a number line. It shows the quartiles and the least and greatest values. So variability just means how much data points differ from each other. So we're going to be talking about quartiles, and if you think about quarters, the way it starts, quarters, we have those in money. There's 4 quarters in a dollar. Quarters, we have them in sports, so we have 4 of whatever in sports. I'm not very good at sports, y'all know that. So quartiles means that we split the data into 4 pieces. So to make a box and whisker plot, you need to identify the quartiles of a data set. So the quartiles divide the data into 4 equal parts. Like I said, quartiles sounds like the word quarter, which means 4. The second quartile is the median of the data. So we've been finding the median of a data set. That is your Q2. The first quartile is the median of the lower half of the data. And I'll show you how to find this in just a second. The third quartile is the median of the upper half of that data. So we will be finding the first, second, and third quartiles. So let's look at how to make a box and whisker plot. Step 1 is to find the lower, middle, and upper quartiles of the data. On a number line, then we're going to mark the least and the greatest value. So our minimum and our maximum. We're going to mark that with a dot. The next thing we do is mark the quartiles. So where our quartiles are, our Q2, and then our Q1, and our Q3. Then we're going to draw a box from the lower quartile to the upper quartile. We're going to mark the median value with a vertical segment, which just means a line inside the box. And we're going to draw those whiskers, which is those lines with the dots to the greatest and least values. So let me show you how we would do this with this data set. So to make this box and whisker plot, it's already in order from least to greatest, which is super helpful. So I know that this first one is my minimum. So I'm going to put a point at 1. I know that this last one is going to be my maximum, again, because it's in order from least to greatest, and you have to have it in order from least to greatest in order to start. So I'm going to put a point here for my maximum. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my median, which is the middle of this entire data set. So I'm going to cross off 1 on each side until I get to the middle. This is my median. That is my Q2. So I'm going to put a line at 5. Now I need to find the median on the lower quartile. So that means here. What is the median here? So which one's in the middle? I'm going to cross out those, and I'm left with 2. So 2 is going to be my Q1. That's a little ugly. Let me fix that. That's going to be my Q1 because it's in the middle of the lower section of my data. That's why I put my line there. Now I'm going to look at the upper section of my data, and the middle number is 9. So I'm going to put a line at 9. To connect this, I'm just going to make my box and connect my quartiles, and my median's already in the middle. and then I'm going to create my whiskers to my points. I find that making box and whisker plots are actually easy, and then when you know how to make them, it's easier to read them when you see them in questions. Let's go ahead and flip to the back. We're now going to talk about using the interquartile range. But first, let me show you actually. The interquartile range is actually this box, using your quartiles. If you know what, that's your interquartile. Range is where you take the difference. So you find the number when you subtract. So 9 minus 2 is 7. So the interquartile range here would be 7. That's what we're going to talk about learning next. This is a really common question on STAR type level questions. So let's go ahead and flip to the back and take some notes. So the first thing is the interquartile range. So you're basically going to copy that word from the top on that line. It's a very long word. It is a measure of variation. Number 2, the difference between the first quartile and the third quartile is called the interquartile range. Remember, difference means subtract. So we're going to subtract the third quartile and the first quartile in order to find the interquartile range. The interquartile range is typically abbreviated as IQR. Because we are lazy mathematicians, we do not want to write that entire word. So the IQR represents the range of the middle half of the data. So we're literally taking the middle section of it. If you have a small interquartile range, it means that the data is close together. So the smaller the number, the closer the data is. If you have a large interquartile range, it means that the data is spread out. In order to find the interquartile range, you have to find all 3 quartiles. So Q1, Q2, and Q3. Then you're going to subtract Q1, so quartile 1, from quartile 3. Just like we do with our minimum and maximum when we're finding the range normally. So let's go ahead and look at the steps to find interquartile range. So to find the interquartile range, we need to find the median first of the entire data set. Remember, this is going to be our Q2, just like we learned on the other side for a box plot. Then we need to find the median of the lower half of the data, and that is going to be our Q1 or quartile 1. After we find quartile 1, we're going to find the median of the upper half of the data, and that's going to be our Q3. So once we have all of our quartiles, then we can subtract Q1 from Q3. So we're finding the difference, and difference means to subtract. So let's go ahead and look at this example. It says identify, so we're identifying Q1, Q2, and Q3 from the data set below. And then it tells us to find the IQR. So I'm going to write Q1, Q2, and Q3 right here. And we're going to find that first. So if you remember, to find the quartiles, we need to find the median first. So the first one is going to be in the middle. So I'm going to cross off 1 on each side, but so I can still see it. And my middle is 15. That is going to be my Q2. Because remember, Q2 is the median of the entire data set. So I'm going to write the number 15. Now I need to find the quartile 1, which is the lower data set. So not including the median, we're going to find the middle. So cross this one off, I'm left with 12. So quartile 1 is 12. Doing the same thing to the upper half of the data, cross off these, and I'm left with 19. So that is going to be my Q3, and that one was my Q1. So I'm going to write 19 next to Q3. That's not finding the whole answer. It also tells us to find the interquartile range. So I'm going to write IQR, and I'm going to show my math. I know that I'm going to subtract quartile 1 and quartile 3. So 19 and 12. So over here I'm going to do 19 minus 12, and that gives me 7. So my IQR would be 7. Interquartile range and box and whisker plots tend to have a lot of heavy vocabulary, so you need to be familiar with median, quartiles, those kind of things, especially with that picture and how they look, because a lot of times they're going to be giving you a box and whisker plot that's completed and they're going to ask you to find information about it. Typically the questions are about the median or the interquartile range, so what's inside that box. If I was to make this one into a box, let's see, I would have 10, 11, 12, 13. You don't have to write this down. I am just simply showing you for an example. So I would have my minimum is at 10. So I'm going to put my point. My maximum is at 20. And then I found my Q1 at 12 and my Q3 at 19, and my Q2 was at 15. So now I would just connect my dots and make my whiskers off my box. So this would be the example of the box plot you could create for this data set. Again, the IQR is simply how far in between these two are from each other. So if you're looking at a box plot, the IQR is just what's in the box.